I see it now. Oh, I see it now.
I'd like to do another number for you right now.
Searching for identity, open channel.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
I get that.
You get that.
I hope we all share it. I think we'll be ahead and then come back.
Good dawning, everyone, period. We apologize for the sound quality, period. They are working on it right now, period.
From the same album. It's an idea that I hope we all can share it.
All right, greetings, and salutations, everybody. Welcome to Chief Speaks, student style, student edition. Peace to everybody that's in the chat room. You guys fill it in. And we got the wonderful Michelle flying with us today. Sister Michelle, how you feeling today?
I am doing wonderful. Greetings, everyone. Happy to be here. Happy to join you for the chat.
Cool, man. This is going to be a wonderful experience, man. We're talking about the whole month thing was identity. And talking about identity was just, there was some great points that was hit. And we're gonna pull it in the rear, bring it up to close, and finish it off before we take it into another topic next month. So we're just gonna jump right into it. We're talking about identity. And one of the things that stood out for me was a lot of things that just really he touched on. But one of them was just knowing the people that you're around and the circle that you hang with. And when you hang in certain circles, you hang with certain people that don't project their identity on you. It's a matter of where they can right now, where they go. It's really we pop up and get done with the next life. So and it's all. Hang with 5 idiots, you're going to be the 6th around it. So, I mean, you want to go, oh, but they're my friends, they're, we grew up together, we did this. But to evolve, you're going to have to let some things go. Some things can't go into certain places with you. And if you're not critical about who you are hanging around with and who somebody now starts to say, oh, you should, what you think you're better than us, what you think you're better than me, and then they start to project that identity onto you. Because they're not happy of their own life and where they're going. And all of a sudden, you might start to take on some of those shortcomings that they have and say, you know what, you're right. We can't really do too much. Can't. Can I be heard? I think it said choppy.
I can hear you, but there's an echo, brother.
Okay, well, I'm a one of them was just knowing the people that you're around, the circle that you hang with. Hang with 5 around it. So I mean, one of our offers in my friends is, we work together, we did this, but to evolve. And say, you're fine, we're good, we'll figure it out, or we'll get it done. And if you look around, there's so many people that are lost too that you fit right in with what everybody else is doing. So that doesn't make it seem that you are that off because everybody else is so off. Because you now start to accept the identity, the overall identity that one has now taken on. But then once you can gain some humility and reach out and say, you know what, I may not be on the right course. I may not be in the right direction, and put on a different pair of glasses and say, hold on, man, I was using a map for Detroit and I live in Miami. Now, yeah, I have a map, but I'm not necessarily getting to my locations the way that I want to get to. So now what do I have to do? I have to go ahead and change the map that I've been using, my location device, to get to where I need to be. And that means that you're going to have to look at things a little differently than you looked at them before. That means that you might have to say, hold on, man, well, everybody told me that they're there in my group or they're in my corner, or we're supposed to all be, we're going to put our fists up, we're all black and all of this. Well, hold on, let me start to look at this with a different eye. This might mean that I might not hang with this group no more. I might not be everybody that was in this group is not And then you might be vilified, you might get kicked out, but at the end of the day, you have to do what you need to do to ascend to the next level. And one of those things that you have to do then again is that assessing that circle is just one of the big things that stood out. I'll let you jump in there, Sister Michelle.
Wow, what you said, brother, is so true. And it's a major part of I guess shifting from that temporal ego, moving into like the objective perspective. And I get caught up in that a lot, because there's so many levels of that. Like first, you're born into your family, and they teach you, oh, these are the way Dominicans do it, or this is what Costa Ricans do, or this is what all these people do. And then you go into school, and then it's like, oh, they're this country. So we're so on so many different ego planes. And then the whole being a woman and being a male, and there's so many levels of separation. And I don't think we're ever taught to unify as children. And I think that was one of the hugest points I think that Chief made in this month, that we all have to look at the commonalities that we have amongst each other versus looking at what makes us different. And personally, all of these month lessons, I feel like I live. Each one of these lessons, I feel like I'm going through it while Chief is talking about it, because like last month, it was always like, oh, male, female dichotomy, and, what we have to do as this group or that group. And it's like, no, what do we have to do as a human race, to elevate? But it's so hard to get there, over 2 hours. You can't just sit there and listen to it. But I think daily practice of being aware, having that objective perspective of like, oh, stop beating yourself up over this. It's just a challenge in your path. And it's such a broad topic because it's almost like the society is designed, from Trump to everything that's going on in this country, the Western country, is made to not unify. And what do you think, brother?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I jump on, I know Brother Charles had jumped on. Brother Charles, can you hear us?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Good
morning. Welcome, brother. Welcome.
Brother Zach, Brother Michelle, always a pleasure to be here with you all on this last Sunday of the month. So let me just jump right in. I thought that this subject of identity really tied well into last month's, when we're talking about the Libra and the balancing of the scales, and particularly what it means to shave things off. And what I was thinking about over this month's shows is that, we come to this planet, this reality, with a purpose and with a mission and with a unique identity that is our own. And then, as you and Sister Michelle were saying, through your families, through your friendships, through your relationships, through, whatever you decide to align yourself with or what is put on you, these things become a part of your identity. And then at some point in your life, I think you reach a point where you have to take a step back and say, okay, all of this is how I am and how people see me, but is this who I really am? Is this who I really want to be? Is this who I really should be? Is this what my purpose is? And I think once you begin to ask those questions, then you start going through that intentional process of shaving off the things that are not really a part of you to get down to that core identity or that core light that you came to this planet and this reality with. And so, for me, I just thought a lot about how, there are things that like Chief was saying, there are things that happen in your family. People tell you that you're like Uncle such and such or Aunt such and such, and that becomes a part of who you are. And then, if you're born into this reality with a certain skin complexion, then people say, well, now you're this person, you're this type of person as a result of the the people, the race of people, the tribe that you're from. And then you may join a different, political party. And now, you're a Democrat. So you have to think and act and behave this way. You're a Republican, think and act and behave this way. And so all these things, just kind of overlay on that light that we have. And if that light was like a flashlight that you're holding, everything that's put onto it becomes something that dims that light just a little bit more. And the intentional work and process is trying to remove those things. And then once you remove it down and figure out, okay, this is who I really am, this is what my purpose is, then I think the next part of that work is trying to figure out what are the filters then that I can put on that light to amplify it, or to change maybe the color of it, or to change maybe the expression of it. And I think that's what our spirituality does for us. Like when you sort of strip that down to, its barest essentials, we're talking about, who are we as spiritual beings? And then how do we amplify that different spiritual color in the time and in the way that's most appropriate? And in the Ifa tradition, we learn to do that through the different Orisha expression. So there are some times where that expression of Ogun is most valuable, or sometimes where that expression of Oya is most important, or maybe it's Shango. But we learn that by stripping it down and figuring out what the light is that we have to begin with, which we would call our Ori. And then we use the filters, if you will, of the Orisha to project that light out. But it becomes an intentional process of first stripping away those things that are covering it to get down to, this is who we really are. This is our identity. And so I thought that was my biggest takeaway from this month's shows. And I thought it was a great continuation of the discussion that was had last month around, the balancing of the scales in the Libra, and particularly the idea of letting go of the things that are not serving you anymore.
One of the things that really, that you just said is, even when you start to know your purpose, then you start to carve out your identity, even in the spirituality route. Now, and when one starts to learn their purpose, you start to identify with now who is really in your spiritual community, in your spiritual family. Why do you think it's so hard then for some people to look past the color coding aspect of it? Why do you think that, once you start to have a purpose, that everybody starts to help you, or maybe even assist you on your journey, may not look like you? They may look and come in different colors and different shapes, sizes, whatever. But people go, no, you kind of shun that because now is that not a part of my community? Why is that such a difficult, in your eyes, hurdle to get over?
I mean, well, I think it's because of the way that we start off with the education. So our education is oftentimes filtered through a dichotomous lens. So if I align myself with this, then I have to be oppositional to that. And so if something is presented to us that comes to us in that, predetermined oppositional field, then we're resistant to it without even knowing really what it is, because we've aligned ourselves with something that is in opposition to it. So I remember years ago, there was a show that Chief was he might go to a lecture and listen to someone talk about spirituality that maybe doesn't even like people of African descent. But what they were talking about, their idea and their ideology, was good information. And that sometimes the good information isn't going to come just from people who look like you, or just from people that, share exactly your same prescription for reality. And I think the challenge is that how we're educated and socialized is to assume an oppositional stance to begin with. And that's hard, and there's all kinds of things that are layered on top of that. So there may be a history of oppression that comes from a particular group, or a history of conflict. And I think that creates barriers. But the true understanding is about pulling both of those things together. It's like, I'll give you a great movie analogy. It's like in Star Wars, there's the light side and the dark side, right? But the true understanding of the Force is the understanding of both sides. Because the reality is that the dark side really can't know everything about the Force, and the light side really can't know everything about the Force. It's only the understanding of the two that gives the true understanding of it. So, in a sense, to really understand the world, to understand nature, to understand life, to to even try to comprehend existence is a study of all people and how we got here and the ways that we are. And the barriers that we put in our way are the ways, well, the place where we stop learning, the place where we stop growing. You know, I'll give you this one last example. A few years back, I know the Nation of Islam started a partnership with the School of Scientology, right? And so they started using some of the techniques that that Scientologists would use in their analyst phase when they were working with clients who had experienced trauma. And there was a lot of, not a lot of, but there was some negative blowback because people felt like, the nation shouldn't take on any outside learning subjects. Nonetheless, something that came from someone like L. Ron Hubbard, who some people viewed as a racist. But Louis Farrakhan's perspective was that this is a tool and a technique that could be very valuable to our people. And so this becomes something that we're going to learn that's going to enrich what we do and how we do it. So I think that's an idea, an example of how how you're getting your information and how you grow is not always going to come in the package you want it to come. And in fact, in most cases, it doesn't really come. The learning you really need doesn't really come how you would prefer it to come. But if you're open and you're mature enough to accept that, then that gives you an opportunity to grow.
And I think that kind of even hits on what Sister Michelle asked, is just creating division and disjointed families and disjointed unities where you can't even look at and see the things that you need to start building towards, because it's always in a perpetual state of just fighting. And it's constantly, even the society that we live in, that, even if the society if they're not fighting somebody across seas or something, then they start fighting internally with the quote unquote civil war. So if we start looking at that and saying, okay, then you start taking on that projected narcissism that one now, you start to take on that identity of the one that quote unquote is in control. Well, then all of a sudden you start running around and not understanding where all of your deficits are coming from and where all of your shortcomings are coming from. And now it starts to create you don't have any unity or continuity between the groups that you're trying to align with. So it's almost like in that sense of in the Carter G. Woodson, when he said, train somebody to go through the back door. And I'm totally paraphrasing right now, but train them to go through the back door. And if, they'll never look for the front door. And if there's not a back door, then the demand won't be put there. It's like that consciousness where now if you can't, because if you limit your studies and you limit your way of thinking, well, then you're going to limit the way that you act accordingly and acting intelligently. And you're going to start looking for a back door because that's the only thing you know. So the only way to transcend that and start to get above that now is to start to look at things from all different angles. So start to look at things from like a 360-degree view to get up higher. And the only way to do that is you're going to have to take on a little bit over here. You're going to have to study a little bit over there. And really coming from a place of where you came down to really germinate the planet, where you take on the fullness of it, that some people that is in your spiritual community, they may look yellow. They may look European. They may look like some of these things because you came down here to experience the fullness of what this planet has to offer. So if you're going to do that, then they're going to start to look a little different. But then it's just what you said, man, it's that dichotomy. But it's one thing that once you just start to get over that hurdle and see things for what they are, you even start to open the playbook up more, and you can start to, and life just becomes this game that you just want to keep playing. Let me see this. Let me see that. Oh, okay. And you just open it up even more. Sister Michelle, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I love hearing you guys speak, but I feel like I mostly just bring, life experience. And, it's very funny to see how people react. I'm sorry. It's funny to see how people who are stuck in all the dichotomies react to when you're doing something different. Like I've always kind of been like a contrarian to my culture, and been very vocal about the atrocities that happen. Like, for example, I'm Dominican, and I never really understood why Black people are so racist against Black people, with the whole Haiti Dominican thing. And the way they treat the people is so bad. And I saw it firsthand as a child, and I never thought it made any sense. You know, like, why would you feed people food that you wouldn't want to eat, for example, you know? Or why, like, a more current example, like, why would I welcome someone who's not my blood into my house and treat them like family? You know, that to me makes no sense. It's like, wouldn't I welcome another human being into my home, especially when they're the ones preaching to me, oh, you should never deny anybody food, shelter, or clothing. But now you're telling me that I should deny. You know, so it's a lot of stuff that, like, people don't want to take a look at. You know, so I stepped away from the dichotomy. I stepped away from those people, and I just kind of like gave up on trying to make them see that the way they have done things in the past might be off. And I'm just gonna do it myself. You can look at me what I'm doing, but don't come and bring your stuff over here. You know, we're happy here. So I've created a happy home where a lot of my family aren't the family I was born into. Like, a lot of people that I live with, that I love, are my spiritual family. They're not my blood. Actually, they rarely want to participate because they see, it's almost like it hurts them to see what living in unity in a community is like, because they're so used to being disunified that, like, admitting to themselves that, like, oh yeah, you know, maybe we should take a look at this. It hurts. It's painful to them. And, you know, that in itself makes me see that some of the times when I have my own issues that I don't like, addictions, for example, it's painful to me to let go of these silly things. You know, so I've been just using Chief's lectures, seeing the message that he has to convey. I see it in other people, but then I also try to see it in myself. Like, oh, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing dichotomy. I've seen that people are hurt when they have to let go of these egotistical things. Let me see where I hurt. Why is it so painful for me to leave sugar? You know, like, it's like so many levels to all these temporal attachments to these, that having the lecture that Chief just gave about being open to objective perspective and being self-analytical of where are my attachments to all these dichotomies, and where, like Brother Charles just said, where can I shed? Where can I just cut this off? You know, and what's funny is that it hurts. You literally don't want to let go of these things because it's almost like a romanticism, right? Like, we romanticize our childhood. Like, our childhood was the best thing ever. You know, like, oh, do you remember the McDonald's cheeseburgers with the ketchup and the onions? It's like, yeah, I do, but that stuff was the worst. You know, why would you have so much emotional attachment to things that have hurt you? You know, that you know is toxic, you know is poison. And those are the things that, you know, make me say, you know what, I'm just being dumb. I'm being dumb for not doing the same things that I'm telling other people that they're dumb for not doing. Like, it's really a blessing, you know, to be able to have objective perspective and be detached from ego. Like, I don't feel embarrassed about all the growth that I've had over the many years that I've been calling over on new. Sorry. And, like, right now I have an apprentice with me, and she's learning under me, but I guess, like, she's just seeing how I move, and that's the teachings in itself. But she's listening to all Chief shows, and sometimes I hear it and I'm just like, oh man, you know, like, how embarrassing. But then at the same time, I'm like, no, that's not embarrassing. It's not, I'm not attached to that. That was me 2 years ago. Who cares about me 2 years ago? That person's in the past, you know, that, you know, literal defecations in the past, I let that go. So that was my biggest takeoff. You know, I try to bring, life experience into the student panel because, the things that Chief is talking about is applicable and it's happening. It's almost like always happening simultaneous with what I'm going through because, life is a ritual, right? Chief has said it many times. And I think,
absolutely. And when I just heard you speak, it was just making me think of too. One of the hardest challenges for me was just being able to say, you know what, I don't really care. And it was because just how the mind works is it just wants to fix problems. And every time you turn on the TV, or every time you look into a newspaper, or every time you look into something telling you what the problem is, this problem, that problem, problems going on over there, the problems going on over here. And you're like, okay, well, what can you do about it? And then there really is nothing you can do about it. And still, I got to a place where I was like, you know what? I don't really care. Yeah, I don't really care about what's going on way over there. I don't really care. You know what? And just what Brother Charles was just talking about is when you know your purpose. And when you start to move in the direction where you're supposed to move in, you know what? You don't really get caught up in what's going on way over somewhere that has nothing to do with you. You don't get caught up with somebody else getting in all this gossiping over here and saying, oh yeah, or taking on a football game or basketball game, and this is all, did you see how many points so-and-so scored? And you know what? I don't really care. That has nothing to do with me, man. This is what I'm moving, and this is where I'm going. So it just starts to help clean up and get clarity of what one is down here and what you're supposed to do, and then it even helps you more to identify the people that you are going with. This is, and I think that was even helped me from even how I before I came to Anew. It's something that you just start moving around and you're walking around and you're like, I know something. You can feel something's not right. Something's not right. There's something that I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but something just doesn't feel right here. And there's a problem. You can't really identify it, but then you feel the heaviness and the weight on you that something just is not right. And then for somebody to come along and break down the way that Chief has broken down all of this, from all of the past shows to what he keeps doing and building now, and you can start to see the games that are being played. You can start to see that people projecting things on you that they don't really, their shortcomings or their, like, for instance, I was in a conversation with somebody the other day, and it was kind of the same conversation that what he was breaking down on one of his past shows, just saying how somebody, they're trying to get you riled up, and rocks at a lion in a cage just to see the lion roar, and then so you can run away and laugh. So it's like, oh yeah, well, I know you're mad about this. I'm not mad. I just told you that what you said was, well, why are you so angry? I know you're angry. And you do a self-check. Because if you're not very self-aware, you're like, I ain't angry, and you start to turn up, and then all of a sudden they want to be the solution to your problem. Well, I don't want to argue, and I don't want to fight. And once you start to see it, you're like, nah, man, I'm not. I'm just telling you what you did was offensive. Well, and then you can start to hear the language and break down the language of even how they start to give it back to you. You're like, you know what? So guess what? I'm done with this conversation. I'm just going to keep moving on, because right now, if you start to get that spirit that is in them will jump on you. And then you'll pass that spirit that jumped in and then passed on to you. You're going to pass it along to somebody else, and then you're wondering why you can't even gain no unity, because you wasn't able to build up one's own force field to block whatever that spirit that they're trying to project onto you. And once we take those certain things on, then it's like, okay, now what really is your identity? What principles do you actually stand on in your day? For me to actually look and treat people, I treat people the same by treating them everybody different. And what that really means in essence is you stand on your principles, and you treat them all different, but you treat them the same, because you're going to be kind and respectful to whoever it is that you meet, but you're going to treat them all different, because depending on that energy that they start to bring to you, the energy they start to give to you, and you say, hold up, man, that's not, I wouldn't talk to myself that way. I'm sure not going to let you talk to me that way. And therefore, you start to now carry on a better identity, where you can start to say, oh, I can be that beacon of light, kind of like what Sister Michelle said when somebody pays on. I just want to see how you move and how you do it, because then you start to strengthen the community and start to carry on a better identity.
True. So we have a question from the chat. So I just want to put it out there, and I'm going to direct the question to you first, Sister Michelle, as it's coming from Sister Alicia. And I apologize if I didn't pronounce that correctly. And the question is, how do you move past the thought that what you have identified with is a lie and not real? And Sister Michelle, I can repeat that if you want me to.
I think it's a little hard for women in particular because we're very emotional about tradition, and I also talking about our childhood. Was it choppy?
So you got a little static.
Okay, well,
there you go.
I can use my own life experience. For example, my father's passing. It's been 7 years already, and my view on my father has changed a lot from when he passed away. When he passed away, he could do no wrong. My dad was on a pedestal that was immovable. But then over time, you grow and you start seeing different patterns, and you start noticing different things. My dad was an alcoholic. You start reading or the institution or the traditions didn't always do the right thing. And then slowly, little by little, you start making your own opinion about the person, the institution, or the tradition. And then you start seeing what they really are. And you kind of become detached from that.
Hold on, Michelle. Listen, that you break it up real bad. And I want to hear you so honest about giving up these. Can you stop before you start to really open up and go into it? All right, so if anybody can hear us, and if it starts to clear up, just let us know. We're going to clear. I guess somebody has to still keep speaking. Yeah, let us know. Hey, is it better? I ain't gonna say nothing, but just let me know. Yeah, if we're quiet, I don't think there's no business. Absolutely.
I want to jump in here and just something on the line.
MGC!
So I'm saying that it still sounds a little unclear. So, Sister Michelle, why don't you start talking here? All right, it's still saying we're breaking up still. Okay, so hopefully they can get this worked out. Now, the good thing is that I think sometimes it does get fixed once the show is done. So even if this part is breaking out, sometimes it tends to be okay in the re-listen. So if you're in the chat room and you can hear this, and if it's still choppy, let us know. And if it's okay, then let us know. The Sister Michelle is about to drop that real on people. And we want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to hear that.
Absolutely.
I'm not seeing anything from the chat room.
Right. Okay. We just gonna fake it until you make it.
All right. So Sister Michelle, why don't you continue, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Well, I was just trying to draw my personal life experience to kind of like the emotional attachments that we have through our past. And my closest experience with that is my father's passing. My father, when he passed away 7 years ago, my father was the ultimate. Am I clear? Are we good to go?
It's still choppy, but
okay. So, and then over time, I started seeing things a little differently. And I attach a lot to that, more so personal growth. It's been 7 years of that, so I've changed quite a lot. And I've learned a lot too. So you kind of start seeing facts and events a little differently, and you start growing up, and you start seeing that, you know, maybe the things that that person did, or that institution did, or the organization did, weren't things that were just for me. That those are just things that were like in self-interest of them, whether it be, you know, person, religion, or tradition. It was just a self-serving thing, and you start kind of like seeing the truth about the situation or the person or the institution, and you kind of start making up your own ideas about what's really going on, and then you start slowly detaching yourself from it, especially emotionally, because you start to see that the things that were given to you weren't healthy. So if you have that much objective, because I really don't think that a lot of people look at things this way, and I could say that it's not entirely our fault. I would say that, you know, a lot of things being given to us to prevent us from looking at things in a more objective fashion. But the people who can see that whatever has been done to us has been for our demise, then they can take a step and not really say, "Oh, you're the bad person," and start accusing the past or whatever it is that they're trying to be behind, but they try to build something different. But that's very hard because, you know, you're attached to like your family. That could be family members. That could be your mom. I mean, everybody knows I separated from my mom for a while because I needed that space to grow and to see, you know, this is not me and this is me, and this ideology that they have, I don't share, but I do share this, and I do feel this, and I don't feel that, right? So you start detaching yourself, but that doesn't mean that you don't love them. Like, that doesn't mean that I don't love my mother anymore. I just got to separate myself from the human version of me that has come onto this world to be my mom, and look at her in a different way, because it's that distance can also bring unity. You know, trying to separate yourself from a whole race of people doesn't mean that you're not them. It just means that you're looking at them from a distance for a little bit. You know, and that could include emotional detachment, because, you know, emotions are temporary, right? Emotions come and go. So whatever you're attached to emotionally, you kind of have to like question, like, is it me or is it my body or is it, you know, because, but, you know, I guess I'm the best person to say, you know, about separating from your family, because I've lived through it in Anu. And, you know, my mom and our relationship is still okay, but there's some things that I just don't agree with. But that doesn't mean that I'm telling her now. I'm not telling her off. Like before, I would say, "Oh, mom," place, like, you know, just immediately start fighting. But now, after I had that distance, after I matured and grown up, I would say, "Thank you, Mom, for telling me, and you know, I'll call you tomorrow." That's it. You know, it's a different reaction, because now all of the attacks that she still gives me, I don't take it personally. You know, so it's hard to, you know, religion is a big one. Catholic, the Jewish people, they're very attached to their own mentality and the traditions, and all of that is emotional stuff. So I can't say there's a one way to do it. I just know that people who do it get castrated or get ostracized, and that's the part that's hard. Being separated from the family, being the one that everyone talks about, being the one that's like has a different point of view. That's like, no, I'm not doing it the way you do it. I'm going to do it this way because I don't like the way you did it. That's, you know, what everybody else attacks, because you want to be different. But, you know, I think the lecture that she gave was very good in trying to overcome those fears, because it's like they are not attacking you. They're just attacking that tradition that they hold so dearly. So it's not an attack against your identity as a soul being. It's just attacking your identity as an earthly creature. So, I don't know if it's easy, but I think there's time and evolution. With evolution and time, I think it becomes easier.
Gotcha. And Brother Randy, we know that you just jumped in. Was there something you would like to say in relevance to that question, or would you like to just make a comment on this one show?
Sure. Yeah, I definitely wanted to add on that a lot of times we take on, those identities, and when persons cast spells against us, and we don't realize, that we are accepting those boxes that they're putting us in. That's what Brother Uru and GPO was speaking about, is fortifying yourself by knowing what you are. Then you won't be susceptible to what other people, other entities that are on these people, the demons that are plaguing these people, that can hop onto you, and cause damage to your being and to your mind. So that was really key to me. I eat primarily vegan, but I'm not a vegan. And I'm, what I mean? I won't accept that classification, because of it's a box, and that's when I eat, say, in public, public places, often persons, they have something to say, because that's not the primary, culture here, is that people, primarily don't eat that fashion, they don't eat vegetables and fruits, just, raw, or even eat things that don't have those, those, meat and dairy in it. So, oftentimes they would, say things to me, that make themselves feel better, about their overweight, or, about how they feel about themselves, and they say things, to me as if I'm doing something wrong, or as if I'm taking away from, experiencing life. So that really just stood out to me, because, fortifying, myself and knowing what I am keeps me from, taking on that energy that they're trying to give to me, which is, which is in essence just keep me away from, what it is that I'm trying to become, what it is, the reason that I'm eating this way is for life, and for energy, and, it's for a purpose. So keeping true to my purpose is, the reason why I behave the way that I actually behave.
Yeah. Thank you, Brother Randy. I would just in reference to Sister Alicia's question, I would say that, and I think Sister Michelle was hitting on this too. Sometimes the biggest obstacle that we have to making a change is our own ego. And a lot of times we stay attached to things that we know are not working for us or not in our best interest, because our ego makes us feel like we will look foolish if we decide to make the change that we know that we should. So, a lot of people will stay in relationships that they know are not working for them because they're afraid of having someone say, I told you that such and such wasn't going to work out for you. Or, we might stay in a job or in, a religion even that we know is not working for us because we're afraid of someone saying something negative about us. And the thing with, the ego is always going to want to keep things as they are. And it always is sending that message that, essentially you're okay, you're all right. The problem is them. The problem is everybody outside of you. They don't know what's going on with you. And that steady diet of, self-programming is sometimes one of the main reasons why we can't make the changes that we know are necessary. And also, similar to what, Sister Michelle was saying, that change process is hard. You know, if growth was easy, everybody would do it. But, you know, all of us have people in our lives that we can see where they decided to stop growing. You know, and you see it, especially as you become more of an adult. And if you have friends that have been with you for a long time, you can see the point where they stopped wanting to grow. And even if life, you know, sends them several messages telling them they have to do something different, there's a resistance that builds up that will prevent them from making that change. And a lot of times that resistance is coming from the ego. And so, you know, you know, some of what Brother Randy was saying, you know, knowing who you are and being able to step back and do that intentional, you know, self-reflection and looking at your actions and who you are and how you're living is a critical and ongoing point in deciding how to move forward. Because there isn't any real arrival. So there's not a point where you have it all figured out. That's not going to come. But you can keep moving in that direction, and the continuous process of moving in that direction is going to constantly require self-work. And it means that sometimes you're going to look back and see a decision you made or something that you aligned yourself with or a belief system that you had that you're going to have to demonstrate courage to separate from. And that's a difficult process, but it's a necessary one if you want to grow. And, you know, developing your identity is a growth process. So, you know, I can say that I've definitely been in situations where I had to challenge some of my notions and ideas. And it is a process, and it's a painful process, but you're not foolish for having thought that way or lived that way or did those things because you didn't know better. If you continue to do those things and live that way and make those decisions and you do know better, then you're being foolish. And then that's the part of it that should be really hurting you, for lack of a better term.
You know, and one of the things that I keep, that just keeps replaying in my head is I always heard Chief people like, just be ready. You take this thing to the abyss, right? And every time that I hear that, it's just a matter of now, I just automatically picture a child. And even when you're a child, you know, and if you ever seen them in the supermarket, or I just have my nephew or my niece out here. And one of the things that when you see a little child, you know, they get latched onto the parent. And when you latch on into a certain environment, you're comfortable and familiar with an area, sometimes it's hard to leave that area, just like a child does not want to leave the parent. So even if you get to a supermarket or unfamiliar place, the child sometimes will sit there. Now you have some children who will say they'll walk off and they'll go off while you stand there and you watch them. But then they'll get a little ways out there and then they'll turn around and say, hold on, I'm out here by myself. Where did everybody go? Now they're going to do one of two things. They're going to sit there and cry. And they're going to be like, oh, man, I'm by myself. Where is everybody at? Or they'll just sit there and they'll start looking around like, oh, okay, this is interesting. This is where I find the difference between being somebody stepping out there and being unique and then somebody stepping out there and being whole. Because unique will just stay right there at that little spot. Say, well, at least I'm different from the pack and I'm out here and somebody will see me, so I'm just going to stay here. Some people will fold in and say, I'm going to just start to cry and I'm looking for everybody else because this is too hard to be out here on my own. So I still identify more with that group back there that I'm really trying, I'm evolving in it. And I'm getting to spaces where I can actually get out on my own. But then, you know what? It just feels more comfortable for me to be in an environment where I'm around my parents, I'm around my peers, I'm around the people that I grew up with. I just feel natural. Even though I know this is a lie, I know that's where the cognitive dissonance starts. I know I shouldn't be doing it, but it just feels more relevant to me to be back over here. But then you start to see some children who say, you know, they take that thing to the abyss, where you take that thing and you're whole and complete, and you just keep walking. You got to say, hold up, man. You know, you got to go get them. You got to go grab them. And essentially, when you're in a community where some people are not willing, are able to put that work in, one of the two things is going to happen when you start to take that thing to the abyss. Either they have to catch up with you, they have to start to put that time, energy, and effort into study and put that knowledge and that work that you start to do to try to get up there. Because at the end of the day, we're all trying to you're either on your way or you're in the way. So get the F out of everybody else's way. And the only way to get out the way is to start to get up here with everybody else. You don't really concern yourself with i.e. betas or you know, everybody else who just sits down there. It's crowded at the bottom. But once you start to go, people say, hold up, man, I need to go catch Johnny or him or wherever you're at. So let me put that time, that energy, and that effort in to go up there and get them. And if they don't, I mean, it makes it a whole lot easier because it's not your job to help everybody. It's not your job. And that was going back, you get to a space where you just don't really care. Once you start to put that time in, and you see how it's not the easiest thing to do is to sit down and really self-reflect, self-correct, and start to look at yourself, or even be in a community where people can start to point out the little smalls on your back and say, hold up, man, you went left and you probably should have went right. Say, hold up, let me look at this. Oh, okay. Like, that's not the easiest thing to do. So when one starts to join that community and you know your purpose and you start taking that thing into the fist, and it starts to get easy. No different than when a child starts to tie a shoe. At the beginning, it's very hard. It's not the easiest thing to do, and you get frustrated, you get tired, you get like, sometimes you get overwhelmed, but you don't give up. You keep going. You keep putting one for you, okay, over here, put the bunny loop over here and do this, okay, and then finally you master it. Once you master it, then it's unconscious that you can start to do it, which really, in essence, is magic. Magic is nothing but removing blockages, removing open different streams of cognition. So when you can start to remove those blockages, it's just a matter of one being persistent, staying with it, and knowing that this is where I want to go and this is where I want to be. And you just keep chipping away. And once you keep chipping away, the things start. You'll start to see a whole different group and a whole different community that's saying, hold up, man, I thought I was going to be out here by myself. Not by myself. I'm with a whole different group of people over here. Man, and we having just as much fun, or not more, a greater time over here, because now you can see all the games that we play. You can see all of the stuff that's going on, and we're just enjoying, and you're able to enjoy really all of it. And even, you enjoy the process of even now getting better than the where you made it at that particular time, too.
So you said earlier, that was key that I really liked, too, Zach, was that using a map for Detroit when you're not in Detroit, you're in Chicago. That was really key because a lot of times we don't see that our compass needs, recalibrating. So we're out here using the wrong filters, to really analyze our perspectives and our experience. And that's something very key that I've noticed with my own self and with others. That fasting, kind of like what Michelle was saying, like from a distance, analyzing. That's something a lot of people don't do. They don't step away from it to be able to really analyze and say, is this good for me? Is it benefiting? Where I'm trying to go, is it actually helping me to get there? And so they end up, getting caught up in roadblocks, a lot because of, lack of, analyzing where they are and where they're trying to go.
Right. And, that even makes it what they call is one to really just sit down. That's like, you ever seen anybody go to an AA meeting, or anybody who has to admit that they have a problem? The first step, though, is to admit you have a problem. But if you're not willing and able to admit that, hold on, man, I have a problem here, this situation, and be able to reach out to somebody who is a little further along, and guess what? You're going to still keep using that map. You're going to still be in that paradigm. And then going back to even, which one of the shows was on unity, that is everybody was still going in the same direction, but everybody is not going to do the same thing. So once we start to understand, too, that, just because I have a set of glasses on that I can see it and focus is here, I can't take those glasses off and put them on Randy. Because guess what? That might not be where he's at right there at that particular time. And so you can't force or project and give my identity to him, because everybody needs different things and seeing different things, but we're still working towards the same goal. So once we can start to see that and start to say, hold up now, okay, this is the map that you have. Again, like I said, being standing solid on a principle, but again, treating everybody the same by treating them all different. So everybody has something different that they're going to be working towards. Everybody has something different that they're bringing to the table, but essentially we're all going in the same direction. So once you have that solid foundation, that solid map, what you just said, well, then now we can all start going. But there's always different directions. Even when you get on Google and you put it in your phone, it's going to give you 3 different routes. There's a little traffic over here. This one's a little open. This might get you a little less time. And this one is a scenic route over here. Which one you want to take? It's just a matter of which route you're going to take. Now, that doesn't mean, though, once you pass the exit, all it does is recalibrate. So once you still feel like you made a mistake, which mistakes are going to happen in people's lives, you don't browbeat yourself and beat yourself up said, you know, I don't know if I'm going to make it or I screwed this up. Guess what? It just recalibrates. Says, hold up, okay, now there's a couple extras over here. You can bust a U-turn and go back the other way. You can do it. And that's really the community that you belong in. It's going to help you recalibrate that too. And help point those things out and say, oh, man, again, you could make a left. Oh, go ahead, make a left up there. And that just comes from somebody who's further along the path, who's already seen, who's already done it. And that's why I appreciate even just being in this community, because you can just hear the growth in everybody, even on this phone call. And just you think I'm like, man, there's no way he can stop what he just did. And then he stops it again. And he's like, man, you know what? Get up there. That's what I take it as a challenge for my own self. Is like, get up there. And you can just start to see the work that he has put in, because then you start to sit down and try to put that work in yourself. And like, man, this ain't gonna be easy. But you know what? Game on, because I know at the end of the day and at the beginning of the day, that the better I become, and the better that everybody else around me becomes. Or I start to recognize that those people don't belong around me. Because guess what? They're just not. We're not on the same road. But they got a different map. So it's time to move on.
Or they have a different destination. They're not going where you're going.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's totally fine. But see, and then that gets up into now just being able to get to a place and a space where you can just say, you know what? I don't really care. Like, that doesn't concern me of either. This is where I'm going. And whether you are with me or you're not, I still got to go and I still got to do what I got to do. You know, one of the movies that even, and y'all know me, I watch these animated movies, it's Happy Feet. And Happy Feet was like one of the big movies that stood out to me. Was just a space where somebody, I know some people are like, oh yeah, you know, the way that women portray themselves to get a man's attention sometimes in that movie can be a little disturbing, which I get it. Okay, I get it. But in the movie, it's basically where the Mumbo, he comes out, he's a little different than everybody else, you know, but he has to call on him. He has something that he's supposed to get done to ascend, and he knows it. But then the whole group is trying to project the identity on him, saying that no, you don't need to dance, you don't need to do all of this, you need to do what we're doing. But he can feel something anyway. He can feel that, you know what, but y'all ain't, I need to get to where I need to go. And he had to separate himself from the group, and he would go up to the top of the mountain and he would do his thing. He got into a little trouble over there and ended up finding a whole different community that really started saying, you know what, there's no problem with you, because this is actually what we do over here. He was partying in a whole different community than what he came from. But he still didn't get stuck in that community, because he had to keep moving and had to keep going, because this is not my final destination. Even though that this is y'all's destination and this is cool over here, but I got to keep going because it's something that I'm called to do. And when you know what you're called to do and you keep going, you're still able to move and groove in any community. But you know that comes a point in time where I got to move on, because I'm not really concerned with all the shortcomings in this community. It's not my job to fix all of this. While I'm here, maybe there is something that I can fix it. Maybe there's something that I'm not, but I still a place that I have to go. And there's something that I have to do. And there's going to be a lot of people who help you out on your journey as you start moving. But the whole thing is to trust the process, or as Chief would say, go for the ride. Are you willing to go for the ride? Are you willing to trust the journey and trust the process of where you're supposed to be? Or sometimes you say, you know what, I feel like this is not moving fast enough, and this is, things are not falling or working out in my favor, and they're not adding up to the way that I saw them or the way that they should be. And then people start again, I don't remember who said it, but people start projecting, well, you in that relationship, and I told you it wasn't going to work. Or you know what, you would make a great news anchor. You would do this, and people start telling you what you should do, and then you start taking on that identity of what they said, and you start second guessing or questioning your whole process of where you should be going anyway. And you have to look at the community, and again, what Brother Charles said even is, what's your purpose? Because once you are so on fire for your purpose, then you don't get caught up in what everybody tries to project on. You don't get caught up in what people start saying, oh, you should do this, or you should make it greater that. And those are not the easiest things to shake off, because they're always in your mind of when something you trip, or you might fall and stumble, you might start looking at it and say, well, maybe they were right. And you start questioning yourself, but you got to still remember and hold on to that purpose, trust the process, trust the journey, and just go for the ride, because things will work themselves out. They always do. And I'm speaking from experience. They always do.
So I'm just going back into the chat room here, and I see a question. Brother Pedro had a question about, so the question is, can we relate the ego to our conscious? So the question is, can we relate the ego to the conscious? Brother Randy, I'm gonna kick that question over to you first, and see what you think about that question.
Can you repeat the question? I didn't quite hear.
Absolutely. The question is, can we relate the ego to our conscious?
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a good one, man. Thank you for that, Brother Pedro.
Yeah. Can you relate the ego to your consciousness? I would say it's part of your consciousness. It's not your entire consciousness. I would say that in essence, I would say the ego itself has a consciousness, and you can feed, proper nutrients to your ego, or you can feed it, malnutrients, and you have a puffed up ego, and be very confident, but yet, very unproductive, and you can have a healthy ego and be confident and utilize it to, actually, produce and be productive with it. So in essence, it's how you utilize it, and what you in essence feed it, and if you're taking on others baggage and others demons, and you're registering it as yours, and in essence you would excuse me, you would not be productive and moving towards your own goals, because now you're in essence, you're taking on their their routes, and they're taking on, in essence, their route.
That's actually, that's a really great answer, actually. So Brother Pedro, that's a sound in the chat room that Chief also pointed out that you asked that same question last month. just so you're aware of that. So what Brother Randy was saying, I think the ego has a relationship with consciousness, but it's not the same thing. And I think that the part that Brother Randy said about the ego having maybe a conscious to itself, that's a pretty deep concept to think about and consider. I would say that, if I look at consciousness, like in our Ifa tradition, I would align that with our Ori, right? And so we know that our Ori is like our consciousness, but it doesn't necessarily have a will. And so it needs to be driven in a particular direction. And so when we allow an ego to drive it, or our ego, or even worse, our ego as informed by someone else's ego, then it directs, we're directing ourselves and our energy in directions that don't serve us. So so to take it back to Brother Zach's example, we actually think that we should be using a map for Detroit when we're in Chicago. Because even though we have the ability to follow directions, which would be like consciousness, it's being impacted by a wrong-headed way of using the map itself, which is what the ego has given us. So sometimes, you may have a person that has like a really strong will, but they can become willful to the point where they're a jerk to other people because they don't know how to rein in that ego that lets them be firm without being overbearing. And so finding that balance becomes key. And I think the ego sometimes hits that balance. And I say sometimes because the reality is that the ego is not inherently bad. Like you need an ego. You need the ego to survive in this world. You need an ego to thrive in this world. But there is a point where an overextended or over-exaggerated ego can be very destructive to you and to people around you and to the work that you're doing. And so in that sense, then the ego is impacting on your consciousness in a way that is leading you to behave and operate in a way that's detrimental. And so that would be my response in terms of the relationship between the ego, or the potential relationship between the ego and the consciousness.
You know, and that was one of the things that, which I see, she just put it in the chat room, but he talked about that on one of the shows. We were just saying how you have the devil on one side, you got Jesus on the other side, which you smash into together. You really, is where you get God from. And the ego is going to sit in the middle of that and going to be the balance point of that. But it's when you start to get away from your lower nature and you start to get to your higher nature or your super ego, then that's when you can say, just like when you say, like Sister Michelle said, when like, oh, I didn't eat sugar, I cut out, or Brother Randy was like, I'm not eating meat. But then now you start to congratulate yourself in that super ego because you have now stepped away from some of the things that you have been accustomed to for so long. But then when you start to feel like you're going back into that, you start to browbeat yourself, beat yourself up so much because you feel like you're going back to the other side of that. But really, at the end of the day, you came down here to experience corruption. You came down here to experience the fullness of what this life has to give you. So now it's just again, that ego is what you just said, is that balancing point of what's going to put you in the middle of it. So now, you know what? And even at the beginning of the show, it says that one shouldn't aspire to live in the light nor the dark, but the journey between the two to become a self-actualized being. So once you start to see, you know, I'm not supposed to stay into the light because it's going to burn me. I'm not supposed to stay into this darkness because, you know what, there's no light now. I can't find my way around. So then what I'm going to do is find my way to the center, which even he talked about that with the Buddhist will of life too, is the best way, the best part of the wheel is really to get towards the center of the wheel and get off the wheel, which therefore now is that balanced ego between, again, the it or the id, and then that super ego, which is now your ego is going to be the balance of it. So it's not one thing. I hear a lot of people, you should get rid of the ego, and the ego is no good. I mean, you could be a space cadet, and you could be like all out here. I remember Brother Charles always said, you could be so heavenly minded that you know earthly good. Well, if you want to get some stuff done, if you want to actually start to move and groove down here, you're going to need that. It's just now where that it has to be properly placed so that therefore you can get done what you need to get done.
I appreciate y'all brothers. I did a much better job explaining than I did. So I appreciate having my back.
We all, hey, you were solid, man. You saw Sister Michelle. You definitely don't want to X you out, man. Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, actually, I have a question for everyone. I've been thinking about this for a little bit, but I want to see what you guys think. Are we animals?
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is the reason why I'm asking, because I asked Letitia, my apprentice, and she was taken aback. But, you know, we are, right? Or what are we? Are we a mesh between the two? You know, because I know my biology controls how I feel and a lot of my daily things because I'm a mother. And that's part of my animal spectrum, right? But a lot of people feel like almost like uncomfortable to think, we are animals, right? So we have that same survival ego that nature has, right?
Did anybody want to jump on it before I start talking? Sorry.
Yeah, I'll jump on it. I'll jump in on that. Okay. That's a bit on that one. So, I mean, the question, Sister Michelle, if I'm clear, are we animals, right? So I would say my response to that question would be not completely. And you know, as people, we have mammalian brains, right? So we have brains that function along certain urges for food or urges for comfort. And those urges in and of themselves are like the same urges that animals have. It's like the same urge that makes a fox hide in the base of a tree so that it's not cold, or that makes, a wolf hunt sheep because it's hungry. So in that sense, we do. But then we also have this consciousness, which our consciousness is defined through, or is in Ifa tradition defined through our ori. And we know that our ori is that spark, that God spark, if you will, that comes from Olodumare. So in that sense, we are not mammal, we're not animals, because we have that spark. And that spark of consciousness allows us then to determine, are we so hungry that we are willing to take something from someone else in order to eat? Or are we so in need of comfort that we are willing to take something from someone else so that we can have comfort? And so there's an expression that, we're divine beings on a human journey. Divine nature is above this, and the human nature is rooted very much in this real world of pain and pleasure and desire and all those things. We are balancing both of those things and yet trying to transcend at the same time. So I would say, yes, there is a part of us that is like animals, but there's also a part of us that is not like animals at all and is divine. And our purpose and goal here in the world is to cultivate that spirit that makes that consciousness, our behavior and actions, even in the world of animals.
And I would look at that in the sense of, even when you see what is it, the movie, I've seen the movie 300, or even when people they go out, and one of the rites of passage for the things is they have to go out and conquer a wolf or kill a wolf, and I always see those jump up, and one of the things that is saying is, that's your lower nature, or even your root chakra, is to conquer that. Just all I'm going to do is, you hear some people make a running joke about it, is all they do is eat, sleep, and SHIT, ain't good for nothing. Which at some point in time, once you evolve around, you don't really just look at it in the sense of, I'm just here to hump and do this, and it's one track. You find your way to that heart or that soul space where now you're not really, again, going back to what Brother Charles has said a long time ago, is you're not so heavenly minded, earthly good, but you don't really stay at that root chakra level either. Now you can go down there if need be, but you vacillate between the two, but you stay at that balancing point, that anchoring point. So, and even in some of the mythologies, you see a half man and a half, like whatever. I don't know what the legs are like a goat or something like that. But again, it's that lower nature and that higher nature, but then again being that balanced ego in between. So just what Brother Charles said, in a sense, yes, but then at the same time, you're so much, you're going beyond that. You're going further than that. That's what the evolution of man.
Thank you so much, brother. I mean, the ego versus consciousness. I think the ego is just the animal part, and then the consciousness is that divine spark that comes and says, hold up, little kitty cat, don't pounce just yet. You can overcome your instincts or overcome whatever the thing is that's controlling you, not the programming, whatever. That's just something that's emanating from your physical human brain. You're beyond that. So, I mean, that's how I see it. That's how I've been able to explain to myself, because especially being a woman, and I'm still, considered pregnant because I'm still breastfeeding. But I'm face to face is this is this my animal nature, or is this, divinity? Is this something a little bit more beyond? But thank you. I think that, but sometimes I feel like I get caught up in the animal side, which I think is what is happening to a lot of the humans in the world. They're just getting caught up in fears and animal things and power, food, shelter, which are important. It's just that not many of us, as a race, as a species, not as a race, as a species, have been able to step beyond the heart chakra and really, be able to gauge and say, like, oh no, I don't have to be a construction worker all my life. That's not my purpose here. But I think we're all growing up as a people too.
Mm-hmm. That reminds me of when you put animals in a cage, and you kind of see that even their natural, when they're taken outside of their natural habitat, they have a deformed way of going about, their natural killer instinct or the natural instincts themselves are in essence thrown away, and they're no longer utilized. And I think that that's kind of what has happened, with a lot of us is we're in cycles, we're in circles because we're outside of our habitat, our normal way of thinking, and so we can definitely evolve past, those animal thoughts, those animal instincts, fight or, survival, or, we can definitely get past that. And that's definitely elevation.
That's a great example, Brother Randy, that you just met, and it's just like taking an animal out of the zoo. And if an animal is in the zoo, then the animal is just going to be, and you take it out of its natural habitat and you put it into something and you start to feed it, it starts to take on the consciousness of whatever you start to give it. So therefore, it's going to take on the consciousness of survival. But when you put it back in its natural habitat, then it basically doesn't know what to do. It's lost and it's confused. So now either you're gonna have to figure it out or you're not. And that's one of the things that we have on this journey of, even when it goes back to the question that the sister asked earlier, just about the identity. And once you start to remove yourself from the quote unquote zoo, from the quote unquote, the overlords are telling you what to do, because this whole experience that we're doing right now is telling the system, you can't control me. You can't control me. You can't tell me what to do. You can't tell me when I should move and how I should move. And this is a holiday. You should celebrate it. You should do this, and being controlled like an animal. So at the end of the day, I'm going to make my own decisions, and we're going to start to move and groove the way we need to do. And in essence, therefore, now you start to align and join with other people who are out and wild and free, because even again, you hear that at the beginning of the show, be as natural as you can be with your spiritual self. So then once you're as natural as you can be, then you start to understand that, hold up. I'm not what somebody else has labeled me, quote unquote human. I'm a goddamn deity. And you start moving as such. So now you don't identify with some of the old things that people started to label. You don't identify with none of that. You start to identify and see things from a higher perspective and a higher view. You can look down and say, hold up, man, I'm so much more than what this is, or so much more than just an animal, or so much more than all of that. You can't really define what I am, because I'm a deity.
Yeah, thanks.
Here you.
Yeah, no, I'm still here. I'm in here, and I'm in the chat room. I'm everywhere right now, man.
Okay. Okay. All right.
But Charles, I'd like to thank you for clearing up my question. I think, I was asking more like, are we people animals? Like, because even, in the scientific category, we fall in the animal kingdom. So even quote unquote scientists say that, we are a part of this whole entirety of beings. I don't, I personally think that it's a beautiful thing. I feel like being animalistic is being one with the universe, but at the same time, I think we are a little different. And I wanted to clear that up for myself, and I'd like to thank everybody, because I was really, teetering on like, what is more divine, being animal or being a consciousness? Because I see nature as very divine, especially since I'm in it now. And, so I was wondering, thank you so much.
And that's one of the things that even when I remember, it's now we look at even our reasons, when you look at SU will come in and he does the segregation, right? So now it's like, okay, this is, you're going to split this, and you go over here. So now you can stay in an animal land, you can stay in this land, and you can stay in that land, but we're going to segregate you into where you should be. Now that's where then you start to sprinkle in that Oshun, where Oshun says, create the spirit of enjoyment, where you're going to now, since you're over here, since you're not that, but you're over here and you're going to do this, you might as well enjoy. You might as well have a good time over here, and you might as well just start to respect the process, enjoy the process, and while you're over here, do what you need to do and get done what you need to get done. So I think it's just a matter of now, one, just finding out of what community or what group that you you feel comfortable in a sense, and then you enjoy that. So if one feels like, you know, you belong to the animal group, the animal kingdom, well, you know, that's kind of what Brother Randy said. You know, everybody got different. We're going to different spots. You got different places, and water seeks its own level. So, I mean, if that's where one wants to go, totally cool. I guess no biggie with that. But you just keep on moving. So that's kind of what I would get from that.
So I have a question for the panel. So my question is, what do you think has had the most impactful, well, let me rephrase that. What do you think has had the biggest effect on how you have created your identity? And once you became aware of the effect that that thing or that person was having on your identity, what did you do, if anything, to change?
So, well, before I did, Brother Randy or Michelle, you want to?
Well,
Okay.
I'll let you go, Brother Zach. Go ahead.
So, just to make sure you said, so how did the identity was impacted, and was it changed when you saw that you were going in the wrong direction? Is that what you said?
Yeah, no. What has had the biggest impact on the creation of your identity? And once you realized what that thing or individual was, or who that is, what, if anything, did you decide to change?
Oh, the biggest impact was coming to Anu. Was the greatest impact that I had, because it was just more. Yeah, this is. I mean, the first show that I've ever heard, when I was like, gee, who is this guy? And then when I heard him just start to break things down, and he puts things in perspective, it's like a weight that is lifted off your shoulders. That, hold on, man, that's what's happening. That's what's going on. This is a game that's being played. Oh, okay. But see, though, now it's one of them now where you're gonna make a decision, clean it up, and you're gonna say, okay, I'm gonna start doing something different. Or I'd rather stay in this fantasy land. I'd rather stay in the land where, you know, this land of make-believe, where I keep, you know, if they tell me to tighten my bootstraps, you do this and you work hard, you gotta work hard. And you say, hold on, man, well, let me see what the game, because it's not about working hard, it's about working smart. So if I'm going to work smarter, then I need to know the rules of the game. I need to know the rules of engagement. Oh, that's what you do. Oh, I see what you're doing now. Well, then this is what I'm going to do. And you start to tip. So you get more caught up and stop being so reactionary and stop being so what somebody else or what they're doing. Or even with one of the shows, you got to bang on the cracker, man. The cracker. Whoa, slow down. Slow it down. Let me see where all of this is going. Let me see what this is. Because now you start to see the game. And you start to put your own, the quote unquote, your roadmap in place. Where therefore now you start to create your own rules. Because if you create rules, you create the game. You can't lose that game. And you start to even tip your hat when somebody starts to make a move. You're like, oh, okay, I can see. Because all of this is designed from years and years ahead to start to say, you know, this is where we're going. I mean, you can start to see what somebody else is doing in patterns that even start to take place when you even turn on a TV or you look into a newspaper or you do any of these kind of things, and you can start to see it. Well, you know, I saw that coming, and you're prepared for it. It's almost like if you're in a fight, right? And you start to see it, you study your tape and you study your opponent, and you start to see that, you know, if he steps this way, there's a hook that's going to come that way. And so now I can duck and get out of the way because I see that coming. I've studied the game and I've studied. So now my identity is not caught up in being so reactionary. And after I get hit, then I got to keep getting back up and keep getting another hit and keep getting back up. Well, now I'm going to study this tape and I'm going to see this overhand right. I see the uppercut with the left. Move, get out of the way. Because now I got my own identity, and you're not going to project the identity that I should have to fit in with the master or with one of the things that he had on the video was the asses, but the masses of what everybody is doing and being led to a slaughterhouse and always being reactionary to what everybody else is doing. Because that either at the end of the day, I'm going to sit at the head or I'm going to be at the tail and just open my mouth and collect the feces that's being left from what everybody else is doing. So now I'm going to work my way up. Now, is it going to be easy? Absolutely not. Does that mean I'm going to have to shed my own identity? Absolutely. That's one of the things that says the Ori that leaves the house shouldn't be the same Ori that comes back. So you shouldn't be the same person every day when you step out. You should always be constantly evolving and constantly moving and striving for new levels and new heights. But if you're not, and you're constantly staying stagnant, and the ego is telling you everything is fine, and you start to identify with the masses, you start to identify with being stuck and being stagnant. But if you don't want to identify with that, and you always know that something is right, if you're over here, you might as well get the most out of it. Then you put in that process of starting to build yourself up to a place that you can start to evolve and go beyond what everybody else says is where you should be.
Thank you, brother.
I feel like after all that, you should say boom or something.
Right.
You gotta end it like you gotta end it with something that sounds like you dropped the microphone.
But yeah, but I mean, you know, it's all there. Like that's why I guess I'm so appreciative of what shit, because he doesn't have to get on here and do this. He doesn't have to get on here and dedicate his time to telling you and giving you the roadmap to say this is how you navigate and this is how you get through all of these landfills and landmines that's out there that's going to either start to pull you back and pull you into a space where it's going to hurt you and hinder you and your family. And this is why the families are not working. This is why you can't come together. He doesn't have to do any of it. So if it's up there, and if it has all of this countless of materials, then you just start to apply it, and then you start to see, man, you know what, my life, the clarity, and I can personally attest to this, is you don't get involved with all of the garbage that you used to be involved with. You don't hang with the people that you used to hang with because now you're able to identify, you know what, I'm not one to tell you, but I ain't saying, but I'm just saying, you go down that direction, this is what's waiting for you over there. Man, how you know? I'm not, okay, well, go ahead. I'm going to pull back. I'm not going that direction. But you get that roadmap, and it's all right here on this enlightenment and transformation. And it's not me. I send the brother so much praises because it's once you start to actually apply it, man, and he always says, too, you can't wear this like a shirt. It's not something that you can step in and say, I got a Lakers on, so I part with. This has to be inside of you. And once you put it inside of you and you put it in your heart, then all of a sudden you start to take on a whole new identity. It's that aura and that feel, that skunk vibration that you say, hold up, people start to see your stripes. You start to move different. You start to walk different. You start to talk different. And then all of a sudden people start to have to address you differently because guess what? Those conversations that I used to entertain, I don't entertain them no more. That browbeating that I used to jump into and we be in chit-chatting, I don't do that. So if I'm not doing that no more, when you come around me, either you get up here with me or you get left behind. Which one? I don't really care because you're not caught up in what somebody else is doing now because you're still putting the moves that you're putting on. And that's what this whole enlightenment and transformation experience has done for me and has helped me to even gain my own personal identity of moving forward.
Good, thanks, brother. And I want to ask you something, brother Zach. Do you think the person that you were when you first listened to Chief, if somebody would have told you that you would be here at this point in your life, what do you think you would have done? Would you have stayed? Would you have run? Like, would it sound crazy to you?
Yeah, well, you know, anytime you get to a space, you always don't, like, if somebody was to tell you when you was 10 that you were going to have so many children and you were going to do this, you'd be like, man, you're nuts. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm just right here. But I think the whole thing is just being able and ready and willing to go for the ride. Just being willing to trust the process. But you know what? I don't necessarily, because life, in essence, is not about the destination. It's all about the journey. And there's beauty in the struggle. There's beauty in fighting for what you want. There's beauty. And once you start to accept it, you start to look at that and take it on as, oh, okay, this is the game that's being played. You start to learn the game. You start to, you experience it to its fullest and you have a good time. You enjoy it. And you say, you know what, because even if I got to where I wanted to be, or even if somebody told me this is where you're going to be, I always felt like I was destined for greatness. How I'm getting there, I don't know. How is it going to look and how is it going to play out? I don't know. But you know what? I'm just willing to go for the ride. I'm willing to have a good time. I'm willing to, even, like the tarot, become the fool, because the fool starts to transfer and morph into this. I'm not going to stay stuck and stagnant into where I want to be because I got to keep going. I always want to better myself than what I was yesterday. So whatever I was yesterday, I'm going to be a better person today. And then tomorrow I'm going to be better than I was today. And for me, that's just constantly putting in that work. And I have somebody great that I strive for. Is even with Chief is way out there, because I was joking with him about this one time. But if I say 1 point, he'll come back and say 5 points. And I'm like, this brother is solid. This brother is on it, which charges me now to get back and start to even get more on my grind so that I can get up, catch up. He's not even in first gear. I'm trying to switch gears. I'm trying to switch into first and second. So once you start to do that, it becomes now, and you start to get better. And then when you start to get better, then everything starts to get better around you. And you start to even recognize, guess what? I'm going to step away from the space. I'm going to step away. And I just enjoy the journey. So if somebody told me this a long time ago, to get back to what you, I don't know, I would probably just smile, but I already knew, though, like I'm where I'm going, I'm destined for greatness. I've always felt that. I always knew that. I just don't know. You just never know how it's going to look and how it's going to get there, but you just go for the ride.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to jump in there and say that with me, it was confirmation. I say, before coming to Anu, I often felt, sometimes like, man, it felt like I'm crazy because I'm on an island, and everybody else is, projecting these, thoughts, and, family members, even friends, they all projecting what they think I should do, or, how they feel about different situations. And, oftentimes it wasn't the same as, how I seen it. So in essence, coming to Anu, it really helped me to see that, okay, my compass is not, as broken as, as I may have thought it was, or maybe, I was going the right direction, and maybe, these roadblocks that are keeping me from my destination, I didn't know how to navigate around them. But now I have, in essence, a real guide, a real guide that I can, trust to get me to where it is that I'm, trying to pursue. Because that was really the biggest thing for me, and also kind of checking back and seeing like, okay, there is some crazy still. Mm-hmm. Like I do have some craziness though, because as I'm looking forward and seeing, okay, someone who is much more evolved, breaking things down, like you said, that able to break things down so effectively. It's like, okay, I'm not too where I want to be, even though I might be more advanced than some of my peers and in my neighborhood or friends or family, may not see it my way, but I do have some things that I need to check, and some there's still some things that I need to do, and now I have some insight on how to actually do that. Not just shooting in the water, trying to kill a fish.
Right. And getting caught up into even those old identities of what you start, like where you came from, or with the different groups that you said, and you're like, oh, okay, if you lost somebody's a beacon of light, and you say, oh, okay, this is the direction that I should be going in, because in essence, who you are tells where you should be going. But first, you got to know who you are. And once, but if you get caught up into those old identities of what happened way back when you was 5 or 3, that person is still there. Now, what can happen? One of the two things that happen is if you just try to, you don't go through it. You just try to bury it. Where it's like one of the things that you drop at the bottom of an ocean into the subconscious. It just starts to get crustaceans on it. It gets heavier, and it gets bigger, and it gets bigger until it tells you got to deal with it. So once you deal with it, then now you can't. It's too high to get over. It's too low to get under. You're stuck in the middle, and that's what Brother Mike. But it's one of the things that you have to go through, though. You have to go through it. And once you go through it, those are some things that, and you start to see a lot of times people try to avoid. Is that I don't want to, it's too painful. Or it's a scab that I don't want to pick at because it's going to hurt. And, I've just now gotten used to the scab that's on me. So it's now just it's a part of who I am, and it's a part of what I do. And I just recognize that it's there, but I don't really want to deal with it. And that's one of the things that when you come to enlightenment transformation, that Chief gonna pick it all up. You got look at this scab right here, man. Now get that off of you, because you don't need that to where you're going. Now, that's one of the things of now where you have to trust that process. You trust the way you're going and say, you know what, whatever happens to me, whatever it is, and just what you said, being able to trust that God, I know that I'm going to be a better person when I come out on the other side. But you have to be willing to lay down your whole old identity in order to gain a new identity. But then the dangers of that, even is one of the things that he said in another show, is just the laying your burdens, quote unquote, at the altar, right? But you're really giving it to the altar of that God that you have formulated in your head, which then becomes a cyclical thing of now you're coming to self-destruction, where now you're using a religion in order to mask your sickness. But then when you come to somebody else who calls that to the carpet, then it feels better. It's like, hold up, man, let me go back here and do this thing, because really nobody's really called me out on it. I just went and laid it down Sunday, and then I picked it back up Monday. I ain't even pick it up Monday. I'm going to pick it right back up as soon as I walk out of this door, because you never really gave it to you. It's something that you give to. So now it's just a matter of just seeing it, being able to identify it, and being able to humble yourself under somebody who's further along, who can tear away that scab, to know that you can evolve into another place, and then you can start to take on a whole new identity where you feel freer, man. You just feel lighter. You don't have all of that other stuff that you're worried about. It's just a beautiful thing, man, when you gain clarity of your direction, of who and what you are, and then where you're supposed to be. It is a beautiful thing. Indeed.
I give thanks, brother. I mean, and I also want to give thanks to everybody who's still listening to this point, because it takes a lot to hear this and want to go through it. This is not for the many. I feel like a lot of people proactively avoid doing this kind of work, and that's the problem. And I think it's just a testament to the kind of community that we're striving to be. And, you know, I get caught up a lot in the, oh, I want to get there already part. And I've been doing that since the beginning. I think at one time I even had the audacity to ask Chief, like, how long was this dream thing going to take? Because I just wanted to do it already, you know. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have. But just to share, to answer Brother Charles' question, I think that the biggest help for me finding my self-identity was listening to that one voice that I have in my head. And I used to always think I was crazy, but now I know I'm not. That was my Ori, you know. And in my journey, I was so blessed to find Chief when I asked for Chief, because I asked for something days before, and like my daughter was just born, and I needed a guide, a great guide. Chief has opened a whole new world for me. I'm a totally different person, but I think that my biggest challenge was, you know, breaking out of that culture, because every single time that I did not listen to my voice, to my inner voice, it hurt deep inside. It was a pain. It was just like a suffering, and I did not know why. You know, when I was not listening to that deep, you know, voice that doesn't even have a voice, you just, you know, the Yori, then I got into trouble. But once I started listening, and once I started, you know, getting more in tune, my life started changing. And even when I would ask for things, I would get it. And so I started seeing, like, oh, okay, this is the guy that I should be listening to. It doesn't matter how painful it is going to be in my reality, say going against my mom, say going against my culture, say going against the institutions that I've been taught that are the best for me, and saying, no, that's not what I like. That shit sucks. Sorry, that stuff sucks. That's not my reality. And then listening to the other voice was like, no, you got to do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. That's when it's like, oh boy, am I crazy? No. You know, so those are the challenges that I've had to suffer to find that it's, you know, my Ori who I need to listen to. And if you're here then that's because you already led you here, right? So, and then that brings in everything that Brother Charles said before.
Right. Hey, we do have one more question in the chat room. I do want to just give us a chance to ask. And the question comes from Brother Antonio, who's been real active in the chat room too all day, man. Appreciate that, brother. The question is, what has been or is one of the greatest challenges to the identity that you have formed or are forming? Once again, the question is, what has been or is one of the greatest challenges to the identity that you have formed or are in process of forming?
We haven't heard from you, Brother Charles. Did you want to attack that first? We would love to hear your voice, Brother Charles.
Okay. All right. Let me think about that one. I think the biggest challenge. That's a good question. I think the biggest challenge for me is detaching from the idea of trying to be the quote unquote like good boy, right? And trying to fit into people's ideas of how I should be. And I think, when I was growing up, I went to a private Christian school, right? And they would have this, every year they would give this award out to the child that they thought had like the Christian character. And although I don't really remember exactly what that meant, I do remember that that was something that I won. And I think that growing up, it was important for me to play a certain good guy kind of role. And I think that's like a good guy kind of role in my family or with my friends. And in truth, I think, and this is going to sound kind of crazy, but I'm going to get to a good place with this. I think that the challenge for me has been detaching from that idea of trying to be the quote unquote good guy, and instead really focusing on being authentically who I am and not prescribing to a particular ideology of what good or bad means in that context. So there are some things about who I am and about my personality which are not people's cup of tea, that people actually just flat out don't like. And there are some things that people really do like. But I think me not getting into the idea of trying to label those things that are not liked as bad has been really liberating for me. And it's probably been the personal development part that has come out of these years of being connected with Anu, because I felt like Ifa spirituality gave me a chance to see things in different lights and break through some of the dichotomy of good, bad, light, dark, but to see the interplay of both of those things. Like Brother Zach was saying, it's like the tagline for the beginning of the show. One should not strive to live in the light or in the darkness, but navigate through both to achieve the real, understanding. And I think that's the part of it that I've had to work on. And I was saying, it's ironic, I was talking to one of my friends that I've known actually since I was 12 years old last night. And I was talking with her and just sharing that I really have in the last couple of months come to a real sense of comfortability with who I am and with my ideas, and not really being as concerned anymore with whether or not people want to label those things as good or bad. And I think that was a lot of years of doing things, feeling a lot of unnecessary guilt for things, and then trying to please people to fit into their idea of what, the good version of Charles should be. And now finally, as an adult, and really, I think in more of an adult and man phase, being comfortable with saying, look, this is who I am. This is what I think. This is how I'm going to carry things. And if that works for you, that's fantastic. And if it doesn't, that also is fantastic, because that means that that's not where you and I are going to relate, and to be okay with that and not try to fit into or mold myself into someone else's idea of what is acceptable. So I think that has been probably the biggest obstacle, and what I have had to do to change that. So hopefully that answers the question and meets my talk quota for the show.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you. Yeah, but that's... Oh, go ahead, Brother Randy.
I was going to say, my experience has been kind of similar. My struggle is more of like identifying, what masculinity is, coming up, kind of like what he was saying, like the good and bad, those thoughts, that whole Christian mentality of that, some things that that's kind of like natural for you to do, is deemed as, being, bad, quote unquote, so really redefining those lines of, what masculinity is versus, what femininity is, and keeping true to what I am, my identity, my anatomy, that was, I say that was kind of a difficult one, because of all of the, all of the previous, things we were taught. I grew up Christian as well, so a lot of the Christian ways, it's really, anti-masculine, anti-masculine. So not in the essence of reading the Bible, but in essence of what that community is teaching the members, what that society is imposing. I felt those pressures. I've seen it through my family members, my brothers, and I've seen it weigh on them, and change their characters. It changed their character as they were growing, and it gave me a perspective of like, man, maybe I don't want to be, so much of a Christian if it's going to bring this much strife, to me having to, fit in a certain type of mold. So, breaking those molds is, and some of it is really it's in the subconscious, it's not so apparent, and you kind of have to give those checks every once in a while, like, is this the way it's supposed to be, or am I behaving the way am I being true to my natural self, or is this something that is this learned behavior, so even persons who I looked up to at a young age, the reasons in which I looked up to them, some of the things that I liked about them, later I come to find out like that isn't really like so cool, it really isn't so it really isn't so something to be proud of, or something to boast about. So yeah, just changing the whole, like, my whole philosophy of how I see things.
Right. And all I kept thinking when you was just talking, you and Brother Charles, is, why would one try to fit in when you was made to stand out? Like, why would you try to get into the group and follow and do what everybody else is doing? It's just not. And even when I look at some of the music that I used to listen to, manhood through rap, definitions of manhood through, movies. Like, man, this was nuts. Like, straight bonkers. Where was I going? Hey, this is all. But again, it goes back to what that Charles was saying. Was just saying that, you find yourself, you're just trying to please too many people. And you just wanted to, I just want to be a part of the group. And then they even take it back to what Sister Michelle said, even at the beginning of, this is a culture where everybody has a participation. You get a participation trophy. So everybody's a winner. So you don't really want to disassociate yourself from that. You still want to be like, I kind of want to be liked. But in the midst of trying to be liked, what happens is you end up losing yourself. and you try to shape and morph. And again, that goes back to what the last show was of just doing what's right for the time. And when you start to try to morph yourself into what's right for the time, in essence, you just start to lose yourself. You really don't have a true identity or solid principles of what you're standing on. And the hardest thing for me was to start moving out there and thinking that, you know, if I do go in that direction, then I'm going to be alone. And I don't want to be alone. I still want to be part of the group. So now I'm at a crossroads here. Do I still stay over here? But then when you start putting in that work, you start to see there's more people over here than you actually thought. We're going to be over here. And that was one of the hardest things for me, is stripping that identity. Is like, you know what? You're going to be absolutely fine. You know, one of the things that before I even moved, because I used to live in Colorado, and before I moved, it's like, yeah, you know, where am I going to go? What am I going to do if I move from out of here? I don't have no work. I don't have this. I don't have no that. And you add up everything that can go wrong. I was adding up everything that can go wrong in my head. I was bleeding before I even cut myself. Instead of me just looking at it and say, this can go right. And it starts to add experience. I'm going to gain, get out of my own environment, get to a new environment, do all of these different things that's going to happen when you actually move. I was just counting up the things that can go wrong, and therefore really never keeping myself stagnant. So it just was one of the things where you just say, screw it, and you just go. And if you leap, the net will appear. And boy, did it ever as I got out there. So yeah, that was one of the things that was problematic for me.
I like that analogy. I was bleeding before I got cut. I like that.
Sister Michelle, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, but the only thing that I can think of is what I said before and answering Brother Charles' question. The hardest thing is, you know, going against the grain, really. And it's almost like, because you get shunned a lot. You know? You become that bad person that, I guess, the one that's not good. Especially in the Catholic religion, you know. But then you have to be able to trust yourself and say, well, everybody is saying that this is good, but what they're doing to little boy is clearly not good. So is this opposite world? Is everything that they say is good is really bad? And so if they call me bad, so am I really good? You know, you start going into like those. You have to trust that's like, no. This still sounds like it's a little off. And being able to have the courage to say, I don't care if you guys are older than me. This is clearly not it, you know. So that's really the hardest part. And it took me, to this day I'm still struggling, you know, and combating those ideas in my head. So, but it's a process. And that's what I think is encouraging. That everybody, you know, little by little, everybody will get there.
Right.
And I think that.
Right. Okay. So I'm looking through the chat room. I don't see any other questions. Anything from the group on the phone? Anything from the panel? Any questions anybody has, or any comments anyone wants to make?
I think we solid, man. We solid. And right now we done came down towards the end. So anybody wants to close out, and we like you said, Brother Charles, we can go ahead and move on to a new topic and a new day. Any last words?
Yeah, just real quick, just as always, thank you to all of you on the phone. Thank you, Brother Randy, Sister Michelle, Brother Zach. Thank you to all those in the chat room that have really been real active today. Just with the questions to us, questions to each other. It's just great. I mean, we're creating, or we're not even creating, we have a learning environment here. You know, all of us are learners. You know, we're all students. None of us is the master. You know, we're learning from Chief, and we're learning from each other. So this environment is important, and this is our environment. You know, this is the students panel. We're students, and we're sharing. So, you know, Brother Zach Brother Zach and Brother Randy and Sister Michelle may be the voices that you hear most consistently, and myself, but you know, this is a space for all of us. So if you want to call in and share your opinion or perspective or answer questions or ask questions, that's what this is for. It takes work. You know, at the end of the day, nothing is going to be given to you. You know, even for those of you who have gone through initiations, you know, it's not given to you. You know, you have to work. And if it felt like it was given to you, 9 times out of 10, you don't feel like you got anything. So, you know, you got to just put the work in. It's a daily process. There are ups and downs to it, but this is about forming the identity that's going to help you to realize your purpose. And that's the important work, and it is work. So, you know, continue to do your best work. It's like I sound like Jesse Jackson there at the end. But
That's right with it. Brother Randy, I know you was about to jump in.
I was just about to say, you know, I definitely appreciate y'all, you know, carrying the torch, and you know, I definitely wanted to jump on here and speak on, you know, identity crisis. That was something that really hit home with me. Even though I didn't even get a chance to really go through all of the shows, because I listen to them usually later. But I just wanted to give kind of what I've gotten, you know, from the ones that I have listened to so far. And actually, you know, this is really something that hit home with me a couple months ago. I wanted to do a poem, you know, about this very topic, and it stood out to me, and you know, I started writing, and I guess it's just, you know, right timing for it to, you know, pop up on, you know, on Enlightening Transformation. So it's got to help me and aid me.
Yo, D, right on. Sister Michelle, did you want anything to close out?
No, I just want to give thanks as usual. Give thanks to Chief, you brothers on the line, to everyone, and just always here, consistent and persistent. That's all.
Cool. So yeah, and just enjoy it, man. Every step, every time, and just enjoy the process. Sometimes you don't even feel like it's enjoyable. You don't feel like things are going right, but joy wouldn't feel so good if it wasn't fake. That's an old little song. So just learn to enjoy it, Brother Antonio. We're gonna have a men's call. It's gonna be every first and third. So the men's call will be next Sunday. I see that you just put that in the chat room. So, but I appreciate everybody that's on this line. I appreciate Chief, everybody in the chat room who's, you know, we're all putting the work in and striving to move, become a better person every day and to evolve into where we should be. And I just appreciate everybody. So let's just keep it up, keep going, and become stronger, better people. And give thanks. So until next time, we're out. Peace. Peace.
Peace, everyone.
Peace.